I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone with the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
Sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I have duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Everybody, welcome to Already Dead. Today, me and Austin are joined by the great Nick Bryant. Me and Austin are both very excited about this. I know Austin is a huge nerd of Nick's work, and Nick has done phenomenal work. I need to dig into it more. I just finished the Franklin scandal, but I've also been talking to Austin for so long that I've beaten. He refers to Nick's work for so much that I feel like I've already read a lot of it, sort of. Obviously, there's no replacement for reading a lot of the work. But just saying, we have been inundated with a lot of Nick's stuff. Has really contributed to a lot of the ways that we look at things. And so it is a pleasure and an honor to have Nick with us today. How are you, Nick?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show, guys.
Oh, yeah,
excited to be here.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
But yeah,
I'm so
Austin,
ecstatic.
Go ahead, Austin. Sorry.
Well, one of my favorite things that I like to repeat occasionally whenever I get the chance is basically how you ended your book, The Franklin Scandal, because it just resonated with me, and I've never forgotten it, man. And honestly, the series that I did with Jose on his show, No Way Jose, we did a series on the Finders, and I kind of wrapped it all back around together and tied it back into your final statement, in the Franklin scandal, because it's just so poignant and so spot on accurate for the degradation of our culture and our society being compromised by such sophisticated networks of, human trafficking and worse than even that, I mean, child abuse, right? And I just remember that when you wrote that, right, that you weren't so much anguished by the threats and intimidation you endured delving into the arcane mysteries of this universe, but rather by the realization of its very existence, a universe that encompasses the refined industrial destruction of children and its cover-up by the very state and federal authorities who have pledged to protect children from the depravity of evil men. The children and our society as a whole have been betrayed. And I cried like a baby when I read that the first time, and I just wanted to say thank you.
That sounds pretty. Are you sure I wrote that? It sounds pretty good.
I'm positive, Nick. It's brilliant, though, and I really wanted to thank you off the cuff for all the research that you've done. How consistent you've been. I mean, following up Lawrence King and calling up, organizations he's attempting to get
inveigle himself
involved
into
with.
it.
It's just disgusting, man. But thank God that we have somebody like you. That's all I have to say. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I only had to pay Austin $500 for that intro. So I want the listeners and viewers to know that.
Well, I wish.
By the way,
man.
sorry if you guys hear mower in the background. I'm pretty sure the person decided to mow. We're going a little bit earlier than normal, so it's thrown off. It's still kind of daylight. I'm a little sweaty after playing soccer with my kids, but it's like I'm very happy to have Nick here. Like I said, I just recently finished Franklin Scandal. I really did think it was unique in that book, like, don't get me wrong, it's a historical narrative, but it's also told in such a way that it is, I don't know, it just feels like there are multiple heroes throughout the story, villains, twists, turns. So it almost, even from like if you were reading it as if it was fiction, it's still like enthralling. You're like, whoa, like it is nuts. I would really recommend it highly to everyone. And I've been deep down these wormholes of deep, dark, depraved stuff. We've covered the Finder's Cult. We've covered, me and you have covered so much dark stuff on our show, Austin. But it's, even still, there was times I'm just like, I normally listen to or something when I'm working, or like there'd be times I'd be listening to you like tell the story like on the audiobook and then just have to like stop like while I'm working and be like, oh my God. There's dark stuff in here. And it is interesting. You really are a unique individual because it's like, don't mean this in any sort of bad way. You do come off as the respectable journalist, borderline almost normie. So I think that most people, when you're like covering these crazy things, they're like, this is bizarre. Like they're used to like an Alex Jones type, or I guess even like a me or an Austin type that you're pretty buttoned up, come off as like a Midwestern normal kind of guy, and so it just is. I think it just sells it a lot better for a lot of people, or just makes the juxtaposition that much more bizarre.
I'm Midwestern, but I wouldn't really know about normal. I guess you'd have to ask members of my family and former lovers about that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know. I'm not trying to like get too personal or anything, and feel free to say you don't want to talk about this or whatever. But I think that I've heard you mention this before, and I'm curious, like what kind, because it was basically your book that really kind of brought me into this landscape, this, just kind of removed the veil for me. Right. And so I'm curious. I'm just always interested in what the pathway was for, everyone else when I have a conversation with them. But I noticed that I had heard you mention before that you went through some hardships when you were younger, and I felt like that might have had something to do with at least being a factor, and why you're kind of more preconditioned to consider victims of abuse like this, that and of course especially in a system such as ours that seems to be entirely kind of manufactured to punish the victims and almost protect the predators, at least the elite predators, right? And so anyway, I'm kind of curious what your background was and what led you into this world, right?
I had a difficult childhood. My mother married a violent guy. And the first time I ran away, I was 12. And I didn't run away because I was a bad kid. I was good in school. I was good at sports. But it was kind of a self-preservation.
Right. And
I was sent away when I was 13 to a pretty violent place. And then at 14, I kind of tuned in, turned on, and dropped out.
Oh, no.
So, I eventually did go to college, but some people would call me a street kid. I was on the streets at a pretty young age. And when I got to college and then I got into academia, I wrote a lot about children's issues. I wrote about a book called America's Children Triumph for Tragedy about lower socioeconomic children. So I didn't come to the Franklin Scandal as a conspiracy guy. I came to it as someone who, when I see injustices towards children, it really bothers me. And I think that gave me, I worked on the Franklin Scandal for 7 years, and I traveled thousands of miles, spent thousands of dollars, found myself in homeless shelters and prisons, and I was even in a crack house looking for. And it was kind of interesting because there were 3 crackheads running. They were the managerials, and I walked in, and apparently I don't look like a crackhead. I mean, I guess I just kind of stuck out. But I traveled 1,500 miles to find this guy, and I wasn't going to let 3 crackheads deprive me of that. So they were telling me to get out, and I was walking around the crack house looking for this dude, and they were right behind me. And then I reached a point where I'm 6'4", I'm a big guy, and I reached a point where, I'm either going to have to, knock these guys out or leave. Wow. But once I realized that the person I was looking for wasn't there, I left, and I found him the next day in a homeless shelter, and he's a Franklin victim, and a lot of, and all these Franklin victims, they have such horrific stories, and I'm very lucky, man. By the time I was 14 or 15, I was too cynical to get into anything like that. But the first time I ran away, I was 12, and I would have been really susceptible to a Larry King when I was 12 years old. So I think about that, and I'm just very fortunate. I mean, there's a lot of really young runaways, and that's how they end up. So I was fortunate that I didn't intersect with anybody like that the first time I ran away when I was 12. But that's why I've been big on children's issues. And then the Franklin scandal opened me up to all kinds of stuff opened me up to the CIA honey traps, the trafficking of children, the protection of perpetrators, all that. It opened me up, that universe that you were describing. It opened me up to that universe, and I didn't think that universe existed. That's what really stunned me. The first time I went to Nebraska with the Franklin scandal, there was a lot of heat put on me. I was staying with a buddy of mine, and he was getting calls from the Nebraska State Patrol every day. I mean, this was 2002. I didn't even have a cell phone. But they were calling him. Somehow they got his number. I was followed. And then just the fear. It was, I was talking to people, and it was like I was writing a expose on the KGB and Stalinist Russia. Wow. And the last night I was there, of course, I had that death threat by that woman. And I came back to New York, really rocked. I live in New York City and still do. And I took a walk with my mentor. He was a retired journalist, great guy. I love this dude. He died about 12 years ago, but he was really, really like a very important mentor to me. I loved him as much as I can love really anybody. And we went for a walk in Washington Square Park, and I thought that like there might be snipers on the roof. I mean, that's how freaked out I was. And so we sat down, and he said, Nick, this is really going to be dangerous for you to pursue this. And, if you don't want to pursue it, I won't think less of you. And I said, Jerry, what those bastards got away with, I'm going to fight that to my dying day. I mean, they can kill me, whatever they're going to do whatever they're going to do, but I'm not going to stop with this. So that's how it all got rolling.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I do want to let the audience know we are limited in our time with Nick. So in about 15 minutes or so, we will open the lines. One thing I did want to ask you, Nick, I know this does get a little bit into speculative territory, but I mean, we have, in your books, you've talked a lot about kind of the weird intersect with these child pedophile networks where you get into intel and then also satanic components. I kind of maybe get a second of your thoughts on that, because I'm very much I still grapple with that question a lot. Like, what is going on there? Like, I feel like there's a veil we can't see beyond of what these things mean. Are the Satanists attracted to this because they're positions of power that also attracts feds? Is there like, I don't know. I just kind of just your vague thoughts. I'm not asking you to make any, grand pronouncements on the specificity of that, but just kind of thoughts in general, because that is like a component people don't think exists, but when you start digging, you realize it really does. And it's kind of terrifying. You're like, what is going on here? Like, once you start digging to all these different, sexual blackmail operations, there seems to be there's always some weird intel and / or satanic component lurking in the background. You're like, what the hell is going on here?
There was I had 4 accounts of ritual abuse in Franklin.
Yeah.
So, and then I'd heard of others, but I talked to 4 people. Well, actually, I talked to 3 people who said that they were ritually abused. And there was a 4th, Shanetta Moore, and I had all her psychiatric files from the hospital where she was at, where she talked about what the kind of abuse that she went through. And I do believe that ritual abuse exists. I mean, there's lots of examples of it. There's a guy getting busted in Utah for ritual abuse. He got busted. I don't know. He was ultimately indicted, I think about a month ago. There was that priest who ritually murdered a nun in Ohio. I mean, there was that cult in Mexico that was sacrificing people. And actually, the guy who ran that cult was a choir boy from Miami, or a altar boy from Miami. So it wasn't like he came from the backwoods of South America. It exists. I've spoken at conferences and people have talked to me, and I'm on a list of therapists who talk about this type of thing. Their specialty is dissociative identity disorder. And that comes up. And I'm not saying that it's ubiquitous, but I'm saying that it exists. And Michael Aquino, I believe, is part of the Franklin scandal. And I believe that he molested a bunch of children at the Presidio daycare. 100%. I've got the search warrant that the police used. You can go to my website, and I've got the search warrant that the police used. You can click on it. And the kid described his home, described his living room, described his bathroom, described his bathtub. The kid was right on. And a number of those kids at the Presidio had chlamydia, which is a sexually transmitted disease. So for people to say that it doesn't exist is kind of foolish. The FBI defines serial murders by, are they ritualistic or non-ritualistic? So serial killers can be ritualistic, but pedophiles can't. I mean, that's that's a little silly. Although the Lanning report, the FBI came out with the Lanning report that said that there is no ritual abuse and it never happens. But Lanning never had gone into the field. These were just things that people told Lanning to write. And a number of the statements that he's made are quite contradictory. So with that Lanning report, I'm very skeptical of it. And I've just seen a number of therapists deal with it. Like I said, I'm on this listserv, and I've spoken at the international conference of the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. I wrote a book, or contributed a chapter on dissociative identity disorder to a book on dissociative identity disorder that was edited by 2 psychiatrists and a psychologist. I've gotten to know my way around this. I didn't really know anything about this type of stuff before I really started digging into Franklin. And then this was something that was really, I was very skeptical of it. I studied philosophy in college, and one thing that I was taught is try to be agnostic about everything until you've got proof of personal experience. And I think that there is enough proof at this point about ritual abuse. And I do think that there is a subgenus, and I've talked to some occultists about this. There is a subgenus of occultist that looks upon the defilement of innocence as their highest sacrament. And right there, I mean, I'm not saying that because, because I read it somewhere. I've been told that by various occultists that there are occultists that are that bent, that their thing is defiling innocence.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
when you get into the nexus of intelligence, and Michael Aquino was an intelligence agent. Aleister Crowley was an intelligence agent. Yep. John Dee, the famous magician in the Elizabethan period, intelligence agent. So there's a lot of evidence that intelligence, people think of James Bond when they think of intelligence. Intelligence is a very tawdry business. We're talking about people that lie all the time. That's what they do, is they just spend all their day lying and using people. That's what a lot of intelligence is. So of course it's going to attract very deranged sociopathic creatures.
Scum of the earth.
Yeah.
I know. Well, that's another couple of words for it. Sure.
Didn't Paul Bonacci, and is it Bonacci or Bonacci? Do you know exactly? Bonacci. Okay. That means I've been mispronouncing it. But anyway, so I'm almost positive. I pulled up the clip that I isolated of him. I believe, I'm trying to remember which interview it was that he gave where he had named Michael Aquino, and he even said that Aquino was running Project Monarch. And I thought that was insane that he said that flat out, right? And that, to me, especially when you also have the mother of the victim, because Bonacci said that I believe that Aquino ordered the abduction of Johnny Gosch. Do you believe that?
No, I think that's incorrect.
Really?
I definitely believe that Paul was part of that abduction. Paul Bonacci was part of that abduction. But I think that Noreen was mistaken when she said that Michael Aquino was part of it.
Really?
You can go to my website. But Paul said some really outlandish things, but I was able to just about everything that he said about Johnny Gosch, I think is true. He led America's most. He said that there was a house in Colorado that was by an elephant-shaped rock, and it had a chamber underneath where the kids would be kept. And he took America's Most Wanted to that house, and that house is in fact near an elephant-shaped rock, and it had a chamber underneath.
Wow.
And I found the guy that owned that house. His name is Charles Crouch. He's living in Carlsbad, New Mexico right now. He has been this guy, talk about protected pedophile. He was busted in 1963 in the newspaper. He's in this for molesting 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up in Colorado owning that house, and he's a prison guard. And to be a prison guard, you can't be a felon. And then he splits Colorado with warrants out for his arrest. But then there's some kind of dispensation. I looked at that guy and he molested his oldest son. He molested his wife's brother. He's an inveterate pedophile. Now, this guy does not have a criminal record at all for child abuse in either New Mexico or Colorado. And he fled Colorado. And I've never been able to figure out why he fled, why he got the dispensation, but that happens. We saw that happen. We see it happen in Franklin. We see it happen in Epstein.
Yeah.
We see it happen in other cases. I'm about to interview the woman who wrote the snow murders or the snow killings. And that was a large pedophile network in Michigan, in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And it was operated by a really wealthy guy who had an island like Epstein, where he'd take kids and basically give the kids no choice. And that guy never got arrested. he was fingered, but as a pedophile, but he split, and he ostensibly just ended up in countries where he couldn't get extradited. But I don't believe that. I believe that there's just too much there.
Yeah.
And that's another huge network that was in Detroit. And then you've got Dean Corll and John Wayne Gacy. I mean, they've got a connection too. So these networks, they're very large, but then they're also interlocking too.
Have you
Real quick, Austin, I did want to,
Yeah,
while
go
we
ahead.
kind of were on the Johnny Gosh spot, you may have sort of answered this as well, but our producer that normally comes for the show every week, he accidentally spilled water on his laptop, so he's out for the day. But he asked us, yeah, he was another. Yeah, me too. My kids have done that, not me. But yeah, he is another super fan of yours. So he wanted us to ask. He was actually really looking forward to it because we were going to bring him up in the call-in portion, on screen, and he was going to talk. But hey, he screwed that up. I don't know what to say. But he wanted us to kind of. This was on the Johnny Gosh thing. You may have sort of already answered it. I guess the crux of the issue. He said he wants to know if you really think it was that really Johnny Gosh visited Noreen in the middle of the night. I think you kind of answered that somewhat there. But the second part of it was also if he's willing to speculate if Johnny's dad had anything to do with his disappearance. I mean, maybe not speculate, or maybe if you have anything substantive to add to that that I'm not aware of. I'm not sure if that was really addressed and when you were just talking about a second ago, but he wanted to know about that specifically. So
actually, CNN published an article about Johnny Gosh visiting his mother. And I gave them everything that they wanted. And of course, they didn't mention me. but I'm used to people stealing my stuff. So it's not. But this CNN reporter concluded that Johnny did, in fact. The first time Noreen talked about that, it was Paul Benassi was suing Lawrence King. And she was under oath. And that's when she talked about it.
I think she didn't she testify in
yes, that was
mid-80s?
For Paul Benassi's trial against Lawrence King. Yeah. And she was under oath, and that's when she first said that he visited her. And I believe that he did. To answer your second question, what I would do is go to my website or go to my podcast. I did a podcast on the Johnny Gosh abduction. And there's two interviews. There's me interviewing Charles Crouch's wife, the guy who was the guard and who owned the house where the kids were at. And also I'm interviewing Noreen. And I think if you listen to that interview, you will probably come away with the idea that Johnny's dad was most likely in on it.
Wow.
All right, fair enough. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. Also, I don't know if you have any questions while I set that up for our guest. But yeah, at this point, guys, for my patrons who have the StreamYard link, you can join in and ask a question, and we'll kick you out, or somebody where you guys can call in, or we'll just kind of look at the live chat and see what we have to do. We have about another half hour with Nick with this, and then after that, we'll let him go, and then me and Austin will probably stick around for another half hour. But yeah, let's go ahead and go ahead, Austin. I think you had a question.
Sounds good. Yeah. Honestly, I really wanted to. I wanted to ask you if you had heard about. I believe her name is Holly Ann Hughes. She's also one of the original abducted children that was one of the initial ones placed on the back of a milk carton, sort of like Johnny was, and she's connected to Andre Rand, I believe was his name, and there are deep connections to the Willowbrook Mental Institution, and how he allegedly, they act like he acted alone, but in reality, there are many different people who believe that he had accomplices, and that they found a lot of satanic stuff as well whenever they linked the body to Andre Rand, and inevitably a criminal informant had basically claimed that placed Holly Ann Hughes in the car with Andre Rand when she had gone down to a corner store and inevitably was kidnapped, and this criminal informant later also said he was a member of a biker gang who was running security for a cult group in the area of Untermeyer Park and places like that. And they have deep ties to the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and also David Berkowitz and the Son of Sam in that same exact area, who it seemingly, according to, I believe, NYPD Detective James Rothstein, as well as Mike Cadella, I think is his name. And they just did, some pretty good work linking like actual mass graves of like ritually sacrificed dogs, like German Shepherds specifically.
And there was ritually sacrificed dogs in Untermeyer Park. And
Wow.
that was part of the Son of Sam's, or the Sams of Son, or what. There's a documentary on it about Netflix about Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil. And
That's an amazing book.
Yeah, I think that he makes a pretty powerful case that David Berkowitz wasn't acting alone, that there was actually a cult involved. And just the descriptions of the different players, I think Maury did a really good job on that.
Awesome.
And I have a tendency to believe most of what's in that book. Yes.
That's how I felt. Honestly, I was curious to get your read on it because I just recently watched the 97 interview that Maury did with David Berkowitz. And I came away with that ultimately convinced in a way. At least that's how it felt. Right. But
all right, guys, I gotta call in now. I'm gonna go ahead and bring him on. Hey, Tim. This is you're joining us. This is our buddy Tim Tuttle, one of the sponsors of the show. Just calling. That's for those who aren't aware, that's Timothy McVeigh's pseudonym. So in the parapolitics world. Tim, you're on with me and Nick and Austin. As you know, it's only set up so me and you can talk. They can hear you. But you can't hear them, so just go ahead and let us know what you got to say, what questions you got, and then we'll go ahead and get you out of here and let our guests answer you.
All right. Hey, what's going on?
What's up?
If I sound weird, I'm using headphones and using a phone line, so
it's all good.
If you can't hear anything, just let me know.
All right.
All right. I guess my question would be for Nick. I mean, really the only thing I've researched like hardcore is Sandy Hook and Columbine, but both of those things have pedophilia connected to it. So my question would be like, is this sort of the same program, or is it's hard to make sense of how everything connects?
Okay. All right.
I wanted to
go ahead. Sorry, you got something else to say before I?
Sorry, I wanted to keep the question simple, so
yeah.
Along those lines.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it, bud. I'm going to let you go. I'll see what Nick has to say about the question. Yeah, I'll definitely call in again sometime soon. We'll see you, bud.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
I have not taken a deep dive into Columbine or Sandy Hook. There a lot of people say that there's, some indications there, but I haven't. And I've never written about it. I always like to write about things before. I mean, how I really understand something is by writing about it.
Yeah.
And you can go to my website. I wrote about the McMartin scandal. Yeah. And with the McMartin scandal, I didn't find evidence of ritual abuse. It could have happened. There was a tunnel there that was excavated by UCLA anthropologist or archaeologist, but there was definitely child abuse.
Yeah.
At the Martin preschool. Absolutely. Ray Buckey was a child molester.
100%. Yeah.
And so when people say, McMartin's part of the Satanic Panic, and I would say no, that actually there were children that were molested by Ray Buckey. When you get into Columbine and Sandy Hook, I've never wrote about it. So until I write about something and can really have definitive thoughts, I really don't like to comment on it.
Okay. Understandable. I know oh crap, hold on. Keep my notes in order here. So I do know that when I did the Patty Hearst episode recently, and I was kind of going down all these different rabbit holes and following these threads, I realized that it turns out not only were there a bunch of scientific advisory board members of the FMSF, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, involved in the Patty Hearst trial, but so is Alan Dershowitz. And I didn't know that for forever until recently. And that just, to me, was he not entirely circled as like he was circled in the Black Book, right, as a perpetrator, and
Yes.
even named by who named, was it Virginia?
Virginia Giuffre named him, but then she said that her memory could have had lapsed. I don't know. Virginia was pretty straight on with everybody that she's named. I mean, she's held up in 2 pretty heavy duty lawsuits. I don't know what was done to Virginia to make her change her mind, but I think that Alan Dershowitz, just from all indications, is a perpetrator with Epstein.
All right, guys, I have another call in. All right, you are on Already Dead with Austin, Jose, and our guest, Nick Bryant. Go ahead and let us know what you have to say, and we'll go ahead and get you out of here. Keep in mind, it's only me and you talking. They can hear you, but you can't hear them.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'm a first-time caller, man. I've been watching the show for a while. I'm a big fan of you and Austin. I'm not familiar with your guest, but and I'm not sure what the topic is today.
Well, he's way more prolific than we are.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure he is, man. Yeah. You guys got some bangers on, man. But my question was, like I said, I'm not sure what the topic was tonight, but I'm sitting here in Toledo, Ohio, and I've just noted or read a lot of crazy things that kind of happened in my area. We had a priest like ritually kill a nun.
Jeez.
I think that was like in the 80s or 90s.
I just mentioned that.
I think there was there was rumors of a satanic cult in the area and rumblings about a mass graveyard with kids. And I think that was in the 80s or 90s too, but they never found the graveyard or the grave site. But I just wondered if either any of you have heard or seen that.
Oh, that specific instance, or just things like it in general? I believe you weren't able to hear Nick, but he had actually just mentioned the priest killing the nun. I don't believe he mentioned the other things though. So I don't know if you're wondering if we've heard of specifically those ones, or you just mean like things kind of roughly in that vein.
Yeah, roughly in the Toledo, Ohio area.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard anything like that? But I know that specific incident where the priest killed the nun. It was like he carved a upside down crucifix on her and crazy shit, man. But yeah, that's all I wanted to know.
All right, well,
if you guys heard anything about that.
We'll appreciate you calling in. I guess we'll see if Nick knows anything about specifically in that region, other tales, and if not, maybe just other things in that vein. But all right, I'll let you go. Thanks for calling in. Calling again sometime. All right.
I'm not familiar with a network in Toledo, but here's the thing: when you've got a big city, you're going to have pedophiles.
Yeah.
And they're going to connect with you. It's like how drug addicts find each other.
Mm-hmm.
Pedophiles find each other the same way. And with any big city, there's going to be networks. I at this point, I truly believe that. And around that time, there was this huge network out of Detroit that was very, very large, had a number of perpetrators. And that network could have been part of the Ohio network. I just don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, it was an awfully specific question. I appreciate the caller coming in. Our guest who just called in before said, fair enough on your Columbine and Sandy Hook talk. Sorry to grace you all with my voice again. Don't feel bad. I've done a whole, I think I've done 1 or 2 series with Tim, for those who aren't aware. And me and him both have pretty awful voices. So we're in the awful voice gang. I don't know why I decided to take on podcasting with a voice like mine. If I had a voice like Austin or Nick's, it might be a different story.
But you've got a reasonable voice, Jose.
It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It does the trick. What was I thinking about? I was just thinking about God, I forget the name. You might be able to jog my memories to talk about it. There was, me and my wife were talking about the Franklin scandal the other day, because she's just not like into this stuff and just doesn't get it. And I was talking about, she was like, well, how could they get away with it? And I kind of pointed away. I mean, I was only like halfway through the book at that point. And I kind of pointed at an example where I felt like it sort of maybe took off the perception or the heat kind of, away from the big pedophile ring or whatever. There was that one individual, I forget his name. He was kind of like almost felt like kind of a to-do sort of mid-level politician or something. And he was below kind of Lawrence King. And I feel like that he got busted for, diddling his neighbor's kids, I believe. And then he had like a treasure trove of child porn.
Yeah, you're thinking of Peter Citron. He was a columnist for the Omaha World Herald.
There you go.
He was part of the network, according to that's the thing about law enforcement. According to federal and state law enforcement, not a single child was abused during the Franklin scandal. So Peter Citron was busted with an unbelievable amount of child rape material, and
I don't mean to cut you off, but when I remember in the book, what astounded me was that you were reading off the titles of which is demented, but it literally sounded like almost literally kiddie porn versions of like periodical magazines that come out that you would see like at like, I don't know, when you're going through your like Publix or your grocery store, kind of that aisle, like, I don't know, Guns Weekly or Monthly or whatever, but it was like different weird, I don't know, it was just, it kind of really impresses on you to the extent to which that has been networked, to where these things have been almost it's almost like people have taken on different roles and like, oh, well, I'll make this specific. It just, I don't know. It was mind boggling to the extent, because I guess you just imagine child porn as just like little Polaroids that pass back and forth. But the extent to which they had, I don't know, produced it, I guess it was just like, what the hell? I'm sorry, I know that's a side, but I was just like, it was one of those moments that really impressed on you. How
and he ended up doing like 3 years with just an unbelievable amount of child rape literature.
Yeah,
wow.
All those perps pretty much skated. Lawrence King, he and Craig Spence ran that network. He did 10 years for his financial crimes. He embezzled about $40 million from the Franklin Credit Union. He did 10 years, and then he got out, and then he had a no-show job waiting for him at a BMW dealership in Alexandria, Virginia.
Wow.
And he's tried to inveigle himself into 3 organizations that would give him access to children. The first one was Granville Academy, which takes children, it's not even a school, it takes lower socioeconomic children on field trips. And I thought, well, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
So I called Granville Academy, and I had friends call Granville Academy, and we put a lot of heat, and then they expunged King. And then he showed up on the Washington Redskins event committee. And now that was easy to get him kicked off of. And then he showed up at an organization called Opera Nova, which gives singing lessons to lower socioeconomic children, which is very bad. And then I got him kicked out of there. But that shows how screwy this is, because it's up to a journalist to protect kids from this guy, not law enforcement. And there are a lot of people in federal law enforcement that know that this guy's a super predator. He's a great white shark. I mean, they don't stop. And it's fallen on my shoulders to get him kicked out of these organizations. I mean, it's so backwards.
Yes.
It's mind-boggling to me. But that's what happens when you protect pedophiles.
Yeah.
100%.
Real quick, back on Peter Citron, I did find astounding what he ended up getting busted on. He didn't technically plead guilty, if I recall correctly. It was some sort of other thing where he sort of pled guilty, but in a like I'm a no contest type thing, and like they tried to frame it essentially as for that way we don't have to put the kids through any more pain and suffering. So he didn't even really admit to any sort of wrongdoing, as far as I'm aware. That just astounded me that travesty was able to occur. That like essentially this was sort of to some extent the most that was gotten legally out of the whole ordeal. I mean, I guess there might be other examples that I'm forgetting, but I mean, really just a few years for molesting two children. It's astounding.
Well, he molested a lot more than that. Guy was also a serial predator. He'd been molesting children for years.
He was being accused of at the time. Yeah. Sorry.
And he molested those two boys, and then there was a search warrant, and then they found all that child pornography.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a plea deal. It wasn't no contest. I believe it was a plea deal where he ended up doing like 3 years. And given the amount of child pornography that he had, I mean, that should have been it. Game over. He should. And then also molesting children, two that the authorities admitted. I mean, he should have been in prison for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
But that's how it is with these protected pedophiles. Look at Jeffrey Epstein. He trafficked girls for 25 years. And no one has taken a fall there except for Ghislaine Maxwell. And the New York Times had an article where they listed 6 procurers, aka pimps, in the Epstein network. And the only one that went down was Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was indicted on 1 count of child trafficking. Child trafficking is a 15-year to life sentence. And she was given 20 years, but she's already in a dormitory, which is, if you've been a good prisoner and you're getting close to getting out, they'll put you in a dormitory. She's already in a dormitory. And then she's trying to overturn her conviction because of the non-prosecution agreement that the Florida authorities made with actually the feds made with Jeffrey Epstein, where that's when Jeffrey Epstein was busted, and the deal that was made is Jeffrey Epstein would compensate the girls that he molested, and everybody else was exonerated. The pimps, the perps, the people that flew the planes, the people that drove the limos, everybody was exonerated. That's the kind of deal that we're talking about with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset for sure.
Oh, yeah. Didn't they, in the trial with Ghislaine, didn't they only call like 4 and it was only like 4 of the victims that like specifically applied to only Ghislaine and Jeffrey, right? Wasn't that how they went? Yeah. That's crazy enough as it is, honestly. But then I always thought what was most astounding and extraordinary when it came to Franklin was the level of abuse and punishment that the victims endured, like Alicia Owen, right? And like that story alone is just tragic. And she's an inspiration. Just
Alicia is amazing. For your listeners and viewers that don't know the story, Alicia was trafficked by that Franklin network, and she wouldn't.
She's the hero of the story, in my opinion. If you're looking at it from like a narrative, like looking at it that way, like as if it was like fiction or something, she is the hero of the story, in my opinion, of Franklin scandal. So, but go on. Sorry.
Alicia was trafficked by this network, and when she was 21 years old, the FBI came in and really put a lot of heat on the kids to recant and just scare them off. And there were 2 kids that refused to recant their abuse. And Alicia was indicted on 16 counts of perjury, 8 from a state and 8 from a federal grand jury that said that there was no child abuse. She was looking at 200 years in prison, and she still refused to recant. And a
Mm-hmm.
kangaroo court sentenced her to between 9 and 15 years. And Alicia was trafficked by this network, and when she was 21 years old, the FBI came in and really put a lot of heat on the kids to recant and just scare them off. And there were 2 kids that refused to recant their abuse. And Alicia was indicted on 16 counts of perjury, 8 from a state and 8 from a federal grand jury that said that there was no child abuse. She was looking at 200 years in prison, and a kangaroo court sentenced her to between 9 and 15 years. And the authorities really tried to destroy her. She was put in solitary for 2 years. And I started an organization called Epstein Justice. You can reach us EpsteinJustice.com. What we're trying to do is, or what we will do is form a commission. And the commission has two goals. A, we want to know why the government covered up child trafficking. If you cover up a crime, you're aiding and abetting child trafficking. So we want to know why the government's aiding and abetting. And we want the perpetrators to be prosecuted. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But Alicia is the associate director of Epstein Justice. Awesome. So she has went and weathered all of that. I mean, she's really a remarkable human being.
Yeah, she it sounds like she has like a good life at the end of it, family, husband, and it is, a common, trope with all these people in the Franklin scandal, so many broken people. So it is nice seeing someone who went through so much adversity come out the other end. I did want to, kind of a last question. I did think we were kind of talking about legal hatchet jobs there, and we were talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and kind of the genesis of actually booking you was because I've been listening to your show for a good while. I just, it actually just happened to be coincidence that I downloaded the Franklin scandal literally right before I booked you. It was really just worked that way. The universe is funny.
It was divine intervention.
Divine.
But yeah, so I had heard on your show, because I've listened to you a lot on like different things, Epstein, this, that, and you were bringing up the connection. I guess maybe you could say a tenuous connection, but for the concerns of how this is going to be handled legally, I thought it was interesting how this ties into the Diddy case, and that the individual handling essentially the prosecution against Ghislaine, that hatchet job, will end up being the same one handling the Diddy one, which fair enough. It's probably a location thing, but either way, it still speaks to the fact.
No, I definitely think that that is by design.
Yep.
You were talking about the trial. Okay. Mm-hmm. The trial was overseen by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. And that position is the most powerful federal law enforcement position in New York City, for sure. And he was the one that oversaw the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, where 4 victims were called, and they'd been exclusively molested by Epstein and Maxwell. So they didn't know about none of the witnesses that were molested by some of the power brokers, and none of the procurers were called. And that dude, okay, now think about this. In the P. Diddy search warrants, there was one executed in LA and one executed in Miami, but yet those search warrants emanated from the Southern District of New York. So I mean, the fix is in with P. Diddy. We don't, because of Damian Williams, and I get into Damian Williams' background on one of my podcasts. He's and it's what's really interesting. Now, this could be a complete coincidence, or it could be something very ominous. The Soroses gave Damian Williams $90,000.
Oh no!
To graduate from Yale Law School, to go through
ominous, Nick. Ominous.
And what's really interesting, Peter Soros is on that board, and Peter Soros, his name is circled twice in the Epstein Black Book.
An asterisk and pointed to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information out there that he's twisted. So it's interesting that Damian Williams, this U.S. attorney that's covered up Epstein, and now he's going to cover up Diddy, or whatever the cover-up's going to be, was funded by a Soros. I mean, well, Peter Soros was on the board. And it's just one of those things where, is this really a coincidence, or is this a little more ominous? We don't know. But Damian Williams is he's a scumbag. No. And he shouldn't be a U.S. attorney. And what he did with the Epstein case is unbelievably egregious. I realized that what he was doing was taking orders, but that's the problem here, is people taking orders.
Yep.
And willing to sell. I mean, that was the Nazis' excuse for exterminating the Jews. I was just taking orders. So we need people, especially at that level of federal law enforcement, that have a conscience, that just don't take orders.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to expose Damian Williams. A lot of my stuff gets ripped off, and I'm cool with it. It's been happening for years. I mean, it's just the way it is. But every podcast interview that I've given, I've talked about Damian Williams, and he comes up on a documentary I made on P. Diddy. And I get into Clive Davis, the guy who started Bad Boy Records with P. Diddy, and how ominous he is. And I also get into Fareem Mohammed, who did security for P. Diddy, and how ominous he is. Now, that stuff has hit the mainstream media, but no one has touched Damian Williams. No one in the mainstream media has touched Damian Williams. So that kind of shows you what we're up against, that type of a cover-up.
Yeah, I actually, when because I always said it wasn't clear, I literally shared a tweet with a clip of you, and the genesis was from listening to your show that I got that idea to make that tweet, but I originally was just trying to find screenshots, going through Google, trying to find stuff of Damian Williams that would kind of be oh, isn't this weird, blah, blah, and but it was so scant that I couldn't even find. Luckily, I found some clips someone I had somewhere else that I used, and kind of downloaded it and used that. It was kind of similar content that I'd heard on your show. It was just kind of nice and clippable. And I used that. The point I'm getting is I couldn't even find really good stuff that kind of had that together. To be fair, I was using Google. I wasn't using DuckDuckGo or something. But you would think that especially people that dabble in our worlds, there'd be plenty of articles about this stuff. There really wasn't much. If I was going to do screenshots as opposed to the clip, I would have had to have 4 different ones to tie all the things together, as opposed to anything that had the ideas together. He was on this, he was on this. It's it's almost like they intentionally never included that information together anywhere. You had to find it from separate places. So I was like, what the hell?
Actually, the Washington Post came out with a puff piece on him a couple of weeks ago, where they extolled his virtues. And said what a swell guy Damian Williams is, and how committed he is to justice. That article did not mention Epstein or Maxwell, and it just said that P. Diddy is a quote unquote human trafficking case that's being investigated. That's all it said. And then it talked about other bullshit that he's done that really means nothing to really anybody. He's taken down some financial people, but he's an ominous guy, and we as people that are concerned should keep that going. Try to out that guy, because as long as he's in that position, he's going to do a tremendous amount of damage.
No doubt.
Yeah, and the way the way you said it on your show, you basically were straight up bold. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was getting the vibe you were basically accusing him of, he should be in jail essentially. Covering up the stuff that he did when it came to the Ghislaine Maxwell. It clearly, I don't know, I'm not going to try and put words in your mouth, but you said it in pretty strong language on your show that this is pretty clearly just covering up a crime, and that would be aiding and abetting, which is a crime. So it sounds like, this guy should be getting the screws put on him. But yeah, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on that, and then after that we can kind of let you go if you want to kind of give your plugs and stuff, because we've kept you long enough. So I'll let you out of here.
Yes, Damian Williams has aided and abetted child trafficking, which is child sexual trafficking, which is, I think, the worst crime that can be perpetrated against a human is child sexual trafficking. Yeah. And what the mainstream media doesn't really get into is they've kept it salacious. People that traffic other people, whether it be human labor traffickers or sex traffickers, these are vicious people. Vicious. And they are vicious to the people that they traffic. You talked about Franklin, and I gave you some. There's examples of there's an example of a very powerful guy involved with the Epstein network, and his thing was beating up little girls. He is a former prime minister of a country, and according to one of the victims, that's what he's into, is beating up little girls. And we saw that in the Franklin scandal too.
Yep.
Some of these guys were end up beating up little boys. I mean, that's,
Yep.
and what really gets troubling is we're not talking about guys in a trailer park. We're not even talking about guys that are mid-management. We're talking about guys that run countries or are integral to running countries. That's the kind of people that we're talking about. And I was interviewing a black male photographer named Rusty Nelson. He's in the, and I don't think this made it into the book, but when I was first investigating Franklin, I hooked up with him relatively quickly. And after some difficulties, he eventually talked to me, and I was trying to get my mind around all of this. And I said, well, how does this work? I mean, what? And Rusty said, it's like you're on a yacht. If you're compromised, you're on a yacht. It's a beautiful yacht. It's a beautiful day. And you can have anything you want on this yacht. But if you decide to get off the yacht, the people on the yacht are going to make sure that you drown. So once you are compromised, there is zero incentive to come forward. I was just talking to someone who was interviewing me last week, and they said, well, why hasn't any of this come out? And I said, well, it's pretty obvious to me. My name is John Doe, and I'm a senator from Idaho, and, I'm a compromised pedophile. I mean, you're never going to. But, what's really interesting is Tim Burchett. He's a Tennessee representative, federal representative. In December, he came out and said, my colleagues are compromised in honey traps in motel rooms.
Wow.
And I've been saying that for 22 years.
Right.
But finally, we've got a guy in Congress that said it.
Yeah,
that said that his colleagues are compromised. I think that's a huge step for what we're trying to do as far as getting rid of these malignant bastards from our government.
100%.
100%. Nick, you want to let our audience know where they can find you at? I did like how you kind of ended that on a kind of a bright note. I am of the opinion that, it is crazy, the revelations. I think we're in a turning point in history where a lot of this stuff is going to start coming out, and we're going to start seeing a lot of big dominoes start falling, and, we might see a lot of, I'm not saying all the bad guys are going to get got, because we know how that works out, but at the very least, I think it transforms the landscape, makes it less likely to happen, maybe make people in power less apt to want to do such things. Either way, I think it's a step in a good direction. But Nick, you want to let our audience know any final thoughts? And
sure, it's really important for people in your audience to visit EpsteinJustice.com. You can sign a petition. There's things that you can do. You can sign a petition. We've got over 40,000 signatures on the petition. We've got a form letter that you can send. You put your name in where you live. It'll go directly to your federal representatives. And then you can sign up for our newsletter. We are growing. We are getting bigger. Epstein Justice is getting bigger. You can go to our website. We put on one demonstration during Ghislaine Maxwell's trial.
Awesome.
And we're growing. And what we need to do is we need to resonate with people's conscience. I mean, the Epstein cover-up is so blatant and so in our face, and it's not going to be the mainstream media that's going to say that this is horrible, something needs to be done. It's going to be Americans. But I think that we can reach a critical mass. When you've got a pathology, there's three phases. There's awareness, there's acceptance, there's action. Now, everybody is aware of Jeffrey Epstein. Now they have to accept, and I think some have accepted and some are having difficulty, that the government covered up for him and his cronies. And then once you have that acceptance, then you can take action. Then you can cut out the tumor. Those are the three phases of taking care of any type of disease. So we're at the awareness now, and we just need more people to accept. So I would suggest that your listeners and viewers check out EpsteinJustice.com, leave your email, and you can be part of our newsletter. And as we grow, we will all come together at certain points.
Awesome,
and
man.
My website is nickbryantnyc.com. I am living in New York City, and I've been here for 28 years. It's kind of inhospitable, but I got to get out eventually. I'm a Midwestern boy, so I need to escape New York probably in the next 2 or 3 years. But
Right.
up until then, I'll just pay an expensive rent and listen to very loud sounds and walk on sidewalks that smell like urine. You just can't beat it.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you escape the city soon. As you mentioned before, that is a hiding hole for pedophiles. So hopefully you get out there. Although I guess maybe it keeps your ear to the ground. You can expose more stuff. You've been doing the Lord's work out there. But yeah, I appreciate you, Nick. Everyone else stick around. We're gonna keep taking calls, interacting in the chat. Kind of me and Austin shoot the bull for a little while longer. But Nick, we're gonna let you go. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I gotta say thank you, Nick.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
All right, we'll
see you guys have a good night, and don't forget to visit EpsteinJustice.com.
Will
Absolutely.
do.
All right, well, see you. Bye. All right, real quick, guys, I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by NWJ.com. Big Shave has been psyoping the American people for decades with their multi-blade razor scam. Get rid of that crap. Get rid of the razor burn, irritation, and ingrown hairs caused by deep penetrating multi-blade cartridges. Like, for real. I mean, this stuff is way more simple, way cheaper. It's better for you. It's all around just better. I mean, we're looking at, for a year, it's about $75 for a year. Get you one traditional safety razor and a box of 100 stainless steel razor blades. I know you guys see my beard's getting a little long, but I do all the edging with this stuff, and then whenever I do shave the whole sucker off, I use that, and it's baby smooth. I really don't ever have any skin issues, and I'm someone who is prone to skin issues, so do with that what you will. I'm also an idiot that usually shaves dry, so that that makes sense. But even when I shave dry with this, I don't seem to have an issue. So, but yeah, I'm not saying you guys should shave dry. And with that, keep your eyes open for a new line of shave body and hair soaps available soon. I'm sure some of that will be shaving creams, stuff of the like. Use your code Jose for 10% off your entire order at nadoshavecode.com. Let them know I sent you. All right, let's get back into this, bud. I'm gonna bring back up the phone line. So if you guys do want to call in, also my patron members are able to come in via StreamYard if you want to do that. It's patreon.com/Jose2020. For some reason, you're really the $2 level is what gets you access to that. So if you just want to spend $2 and hop in,
is that what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I told you, I'm telling you, you should do the same. I know you have a patron. You should drop you have access to StreamYard. Just share the link.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you
that way your patrons can do it as well. I'm not trying to guard that or anything. That way anyone who supports us, either me and /or Austin, you guys have the StreamYard link. You can pop in for these. That way, you could have come on screen with Nick Bryant or something like that, or just shoot the bull with us on one of our episodes, just me and you. Dude, that was dope. It was cool having Nick on.
That was amazing, dude. Yeah. I had so many more questions, but it's all good. Yeah. I knew it was going to be impossible, but man,
I wasn't sure how much time we have them, so that's my bad. I probably should have clarified that, but I don't know, sometimes getting back and forth with people, especially because you can just tell Nick, and this isn't like a slight at him, I don't feel like he probably uses Twitter. He's not terminally online, so he's probably sometimes when you're dealing with people scheduling, you just kind of got to be like, boom, 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 here's your information, just kind of go with the flow. So I didn't really lay out probably as much as I should how long we normally do the show. But either way, whatever, I think it was still great. It allowed us to be able to kind of do a little commentary after, so I'm cool with that. But yeah, I mean,
I wanted to ask him so bad about Craig Spence. Just because one of his properties, I'm almost positive, one of his properties that was rigged with audiovisual blackmail was not more than 2 blocks from the W Street Apartments and the Finder's warehouse. And I was just like, what the fuck, man? I just wanted to see if he, just his take on that, but it's all good.
I think he doesn't like to speculate too much, and that's fair.
I know,
he says what he knows, but he knows so much that it's damn. But I don't know. There was so much we could have talked about. I was super glad to have. I wanted to get into the Kendrick Drake thing because I've still been spiraling on that. Although I will say, it's still all tenuous stuff. But I know we didn't talk about when we broke down. There was stuff that came out I mean, I'd have to get really into like start bringing up tweets and stuff because it got there were like people that were. I feel people have been following this rap beef. They're like Kendrick has been using like album art and stuff to kind of like as drops. Like one of them, like the Not Like Us one, was like literally a aerial photo of Drake's residence with a little child whatever dots, which hilarious. But he also in one of the other ones, I believe the prior one to that, I forget, Meet the Grams maybe. I'm forgetting the names, but he had like pictures of items, and it just was weird. But then you come to find out, I guess like the rumor going around through all the different influencers saying this and that like
that's why he's just talking to his kids. Like talking to Drake's kids, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, dude, that's a trip.
Apparently, what was in that was stuff that I don't know the specifics. There's like a lot of hubbub about what the case is, but essentially, this is stuff that somehow got acquired from him while he was at the Mark Hotel. So that was kind of almost Kendrick's being like, boom. And then for those who aren't aware, apparently, I mean, I would have liked to. I don't know how legit this is, but apparently, the Mark Hotel was in the Epstein, Black Book. As like kind of an area or whatever, and it was, I want to say it was circled as well. So I mean, it might have been something that we didn't have a ton of time with Nick, so I didn't, and obviously I didn't want to kind of like spring this on him. And this is information. I mean, I doubted Nick had really dug too much into a rabbit.
right.
But I mean, I do think it would be fun for him to dig into it because actually, really,
that would be awesome.
I don't know how far you've spiraled down the rabbit hole, or if you kind of stopped. But it is like it's really interesting. It seems like the kind of thing Nick would be into because it is like very. Right. Like verbose, like the way he writes and stuff. Like I really feel like I could see someone with those kind of inclinations, like really getting into like the back and forth, like what's this lyric mean, what's that mean, and then tying it into actual real world research and stuff. I just thought that'd be pretty interesting. So I would say for any journalists out there, I think there might be something because it really is just like hip hop mumblings. But I think if some intrepid reporter really did take the time to like dig up legit information, corroborate this and that, and from like the keeping my ear to the ground of some like the hip hop influencers covering it, seems to be there's some of that there. And if someone is able to accumulate all that together, but anyways, my point being is that stuff that on the fucking record cover or whatever, was from his time at the Mark Hotel, which supposedly, and apparently there was some sort of news story, I guess, I got way into the weeds where you can verify with some of the pictures that came out of like the time, and then there were stories that associated with it, because it's almost like, it's like smoke and mirror stuff with all this. It really is wild. There was like a few different accounts, I think, that came out that were dropping like pictures and like security videos that were tied into this, and people were able to corroborate. So it almost seems like it was somebody, whether it was the OVO mole or whether it was Kendrick himself or one of his people, was dropping info, because a lot of people don't realize at this point the beef is basically done. A lot of people don't realize that apparently there have been murmurs. I don't know the specifics on the source and like how confirmed it is, that essentially, I forget the name of the records. I always want to say MGM. I know it's not MGM. It's whoever, Kendrick has a publishing deal with them. Drake has is like basically just owned. And apparently they were like, yo, you guys need to stop, because they're like, I think halfway through a $400 million investment with Drake, and they own like everything, like all of his IP, everything. Whereas with Kendrick, they have less leverage over him because it's just publishing his stuff. He owns all his stuff. So like worst they can do is just be like, we're not going to publish your stuff. And I don't know the specifics of his contract, but we kind of probably would be able to just be like, fine, I'll go to someone else to publish my work. Like not a big deal. Right. So like they have limited leverage over him, I believe. But essentially they're like putting all the screws on him they can, because now it's affecting like Nike deals and all sorts of stuff. Because Drake is like, for those who aren't aware, the Heart Part 6 where he responded to it was weak as shit. Like he literally references Epstein in that, and then makes the claim that he's disgusted that Kendrick would make these, and that there's no way, as famous as he is, that he could get away with it. He said it obviously in a sing-songy way, but something along those lines that I'm paraphrasing. So it's like, how are you going to reference Epstein and then claim that you're too fucking famous to get busted that in the same song?
Ridiculous.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but there's something there for any intrepid reporters. There's some digging. There's something going on. Essentially, the record company has like put a kibosh on it. But it seems like, from what I've heard through some of the different people connected with Kendrick and stuff, that they're at the point where it's kind of like, oh, like Kendrick's people are basically kind of saying, like, all right, well, we're done. But if you say anything, like even like a sideways comment that's like, some people play some double entendre and they're like, well, that was just a glib little comment. He's like, right. Because a lot of people don't realize he had something ridiculous, like 5 to 10 more to drop. And he'd already gone to pedophilia accusations. So where the hell do you go from there?
Get him arrested, dude.
So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And there is something weird where I guess that hotel that he was at, he had been at multiple times. There was a $75K a night, like their VIP room at this Mark Hotel that supposedly, allegedly, from what I'm aware of, is that they were in the Epstein Black Book. So, I mean, also, what the hell are you getting out of a hotel room for $75K a night? I mean, I don't know. Some people just really like to pay for something that exclusive. I have a hard time. They just have that nice of a jacuzzi. I don't know what's going on there. That's pure speculation. But either way, I do think there is something to the fact that Kendrick made all these accusations and lots of implications. He said stuff in one of the lines about there's a lot of funny stuff going on in the business, and then alluding to all these pedophiles running around, and kind of like seems like everyone's trying to cover for everyone. There's a lot of little jabs in some of his lyrics that you're like, I think he's alluding to some heavy stuff, and he's telling you guys to chill. And I think like if you look at it from a industry perspective, it really is Kendrick versus the entire industry. If you look at it that way, so it's like I don't know what's going down. And it's because like the industry is so heavily invested in Drake right now, and Drake is like stonks going down bigly. You know what I mean?
No doubt. Dude.
I think the hip hop world is like basically really turned against him, like, and just really people in general. Like this whole thing has expanded beyond hip hop. Like we're in our parapolitics corner here now talking about it, and I know a lot of people I think are trying to downplay it, but I think there might be something there, and I wouldn't be at least surprised if this does tie into the Diddy stuff. I wouldn't be at least surprised if Kendrick was like was taking to consider timing with the Diddy
and I'm
stuff
curious.
Kind of going on.
I'm very curious to now find out which hotels were linked to Diddy in the lawsuits, as far as where he was putting Cassie up when he beat the shit out of her, and
Did I just
where
make you the intrepid reporter?
I'm just saying, man. Like you're forcing it. I'll tell you that much. No, I'm just.
Well, dude, it's like cutting edge because I don't know.
Is.
I have a spidey sense about this one. I know I was like, oh, rap stupid. And I'm like, that's not the point. Like, it's like this is like industry stuff.
Think about how deeply tied in the counterculture it was in the 60s and 70s with the Laurel Canyon
think about
music
what Drake represents. And if you follow this rap beef and you kind of look at these as archetypes against each other, what Kendrick represents and what Drake represents. Like Kendrick, while I've said before I disagree with some of his political stuff, whatever, I think in a certain sense he represents a lot of what's positive about hip hop culture, whereas Drake is like this artificially inflated the bad side of it, in my opinion. Like the stuff that's like is like this dude like raps about like killing people and stuff, and it's Drake. He's a Canadian kid who went to Temple regularly, is a child star. Like, dude, you're not shooting people. Like, you're just not. Like, you're not that hood guy from Ontario or wherever the hell he's from. Like, you're just not. So it sings about stuff, sings about seducing women, kind of using women, kind of just almost like throwaways. Obviously paired with this accusations kind of is wild, but like just kind of he's 38 years old and he's a single dude, and like I feel like he represents a lot of like what people look at when they look at masculinity, but in a negative way. Like this is like like almost literally like the psyoped version of what masculinity is. Right. Whereas like Kendrick's, a lot of his message is really about like, kind of being authentic, being, taking care of your woman, taking care of your kids. Even a lot of the stuff that was about him like beating because a lot of the disses that Drake was putting on him was that he hit his woman, and even then, like I think it's up in the air whether he hit his wife or not. But even so, like I guess in the lyrics where he referenced it in his album, it is kind of the whole message is about how it's like a cycle of trauma and how we're all trying to escape it, and kind of like the idea of trying your best to be a better man, and kind of admitting that he's failed at times, but he's trying to go through it. Like, so it's a really positive message in that way. So it's like these kind of, messages coming from hip hop that are like, I guess, more conscious or more like bettering themselves, they do seem to get drowned out by the money, bitches, drugs, power, dope, and it's so cool to be in your late 30s, chilling at clubs and fucking bitches. Like, what is this? Like, no, like I know men with their heads on straight when you're like, yo, where we go in the club next at 11 o'clock night, even if you're able to somehow get them to go out to the club, which is even like most people with families and wives and stuff, most of the time there's not. And even if you are, they're like, let's be real, like dog, it's like 10:30.
Yeah, no shit.
my kid has soccer tomorrow. Like,
100%,
what are you doing
dude.
with your life? Like, why are you still here?
Exactly.
So I do think there is a powerful component there, and it's kind of like, I mean, what was it? Ice Cube, I believe, recently.
That's what I was
started
about to
coming
say,
out
dude.
with
Yeah.
a lot of like the
it's
CIA
publicly
stuff.
acknowledged now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, they've been twisting hip hop's message for
Yeah,
a long
no,
time.
Jewish producer would be in the room with us and be like, no,
Yeah.
make it more violent.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Okay. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty
And like, if you look
extreme.
at the disses Kendricks are been levying at Drake, it is just like, you're not a good man. Like, you're not
Yeah.
a wholesome human being. It's a lot of what he's
Exactly.
coming at. Whereas, like, I mean, and he doesn't even really, a lot of the stuff that Drake said bad about him, he never even really responded to. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm a flawed person, but I'm trying to be better. You're just stuck in your ways as this. And like, he kind of represents the industry in a lot of ways. So
He
like,
does.
I don't know. I think this is really interesting.
The soulless
Um,
aspect of it too.
yeah.
Like that is what he represents. You know, it's
Yep.
like hollow art, right? Like
Yep.
it's just not authentic, you know, and you can feel it from miles away, man. I mean,
Yep.
it's so easy
You
to
can feel the
recognize.
ghostwriters.
Yeah, no doubt, dude.
They're in the room with us right now.
For real, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there is some there. There has to be when in regard to those hotels, man. Like, I'm definitely
Mm-hmm.
going to look into the lawsuit and see if anything was named and beyond that. But I think it's worthy of our attention, at
Yeah,
least,
I would.
especially.
I do want to say, if you do start
Yeah.
looking into it, I would really start looking at kind of his history, maybe where OVO came from,
Yeah.
the kind of the supporters, that sort of thing. If you can find any, because I mean, I know I did. We talked a lot about like satanic imagery. I really. Well, I know it is common in music, and this is where I feel like this is like a byproduct of the satanic panic era,
Yeah.
where now you
Yeah.
are like you feel weird to even point this out. But I've been like a metalhead, metalcore, like a lot of that type of stuff a lot of my
Right.
life. So there is a lot of times where I do think genuinely there's a lot of music that leans into those motifs, and it's not, and it's just harmless. They really are just like. But I do think I think there's something to some of them. Especially when you have like
Right.
what looks like industry plants like
Oh
Drake
my God.
that are saying this stuff, and you're like, well, why did you get elevated so quick? And you're the one that's saying this stuff. I mean, even
Exactly.
if it is just for the imagery, I don't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I feel like I just sound like a boomer that's complaining about.
No,
You know,
dude.
the whatever, you know, award ceremony of the month and some satanic. Although I will say, I mean, maybe I'm just old, but I do see that stuff too, and I go, what the hell? Like, I remember we had crazy stuff. I guess it was just different when we were younger. It was stuff like Janet Jackson's boob, or like
Right. Right.
Madonna and making out with some, I don't know, some young chick, you know,
Mhm.
teen like Britney Spears type or
Wasn't it
whatever. Was
Christina and
Christina
Britney that made
Aguilera?
out?
Yeah,
Yeah, was it?
yeah. Like, so like, yeah, there was that weird hyper sexualized stuff going on, I think, when we were a kid. I mean, it's still there, although it's twisted. It's become more like
Oh, yeah.
weird satanic imagery, or even like homosexual stuff. Sometimes it's weird, which I mean,
It's not couched
whatever.
as much. They're not as tactful, I swear. Like, it's so much more overt and in your face. Like honestly, man, it's amazing to me. And what I've been going hard on is the process church. Dude, it's all tied in with these same exact belief systems that are it's been baked in for generations. This occultism, this OTO backbone sort of it's like it's so
OVO.
it really yeah. But I swear to God, man, like when you look into it and you realize that they adopted the Aleister Crowley doctrine in a way, and then it evolved into something different, and then you have all these different factions that sort of go in different directions, but they're all seeking very similar goals, and it's all it's all out of attempting to like basically, become chaos agents and yeah, cause just insane like political strife and domestic issues. And literally, like, the son of Sam for the Process Church he lit over 1,600 fires in New York because of a part of their doctrine was like lighting the hellfire, it was all about Luciferian, satanic, Jehovah. And there's this union, this divine union that they were preaching. And this is it's like this duality, right? Very similar in the OTO aspect of things. And that's what the process was preaching, was this divine duality of out of divine love, the God and Lucifer and Satan would all merge, and Jehovah would all merge, right? And basically they inverted it, and now what it becomes is, committing committing a satanic ritual sacrifice is actually killing someone in the name of God, right? It's a divine act. And that's it's really warped, but I swear when you realize the different methods and techniques and theological, the aspects of their doctrine that they actually really do, internalize, and I mean, it is amazing because they'll use like telepathic meditation. Like, I mean, it's so much more than what we understand as far as the different techniques that they use in these belief systems, and
It's a lot
especially
about ages is
oh
what it
yeah,
is. So like so this is where a lot of people do tie into like the Sabbatean or like Messianic or Moshiach. So but either way, no matter how you want to understand it, there is like I know from when I was looking at O9A and following like William Ramsey's work and like 764, there is like they do talk about, I forget that, what was it, Platonic or there's some term for it where it's like this concept of bringing on a new age, and it's almost this idea that it's almost like this collapsitarian idea that like a lot of like people that follow like political philosophy will understand, but in like more of a moral sense, where the idea is like we're chipping away at the whatever, and we're bringing on this new age, and when it gets to a certain level, aeonic force, something like that, when it's like gets to a certain point, and like that's for those who know, like with like the Sabbateans, like their understanding was that like essentially inverted the law when the time of the Messiah was coming, and that at a certain point, he would, fall through with all his prophecies, and then you would have the utopia that like ushered in the new age, which then I believe there's a lot of understanding too when it comes to like Nazi ideology too, with that where that does play into a lot, where you find them a lot in satanic circles. There is a lot of like talks about coming ages and how building up to this, and how there'll be the aeonic force or whatever. It's almost like once we reach this, so it is like that's how they're like get this idea of like, oh, if we do enough evil, it'll. So it's the same idea, I guess, in a political philosophy sense, although maybe a little less nuanced, in the idea of that like you're trying to tear down with no regards for. I mean, I guess you would say in a sense regards. I would say in a kind of a blind like faith of that what will come next will be good. But yeah, I mean, there might be other ways to understand it as well. I've thought it too. Like, I guess maybe if you were a smarter individual, you could just understand it as a path to power, or a religion of power, to where you just. You need to play this game, and that in and of itself is kind of its own ideology and religion, I guess. I guess extreme chaotic egoism, I guess. I mean, I've talked a lot about egoism on my show, and I do think that there's a way to understand it. I consider myself sort of an egoist, but I'm more of the opposite force of egoist, where I'm like, no, I'm gonna, if you were in my egoist world, I'd if you were doing these sort of evil things. So whereas the opposite, where they're like, I am God, I mean, I know a lot of people see egoist as kind of like everything kind of sprouts out from yourself, but I have a more holistic way of looking at it. I'm like, well, my family ties into my well-being. I think if I want to have a good life, it's best to like, I don't know. I think using people like that, like I know a lot of people have this idea, they're like, oh, I think it really just fucks you up. I don't think it's a path to, betterment for yourself, even if you are looking at it from a purely egoistic perspective. But I think people get sold that lie.
Oh, yeah.
And there is some truth to it in a sense, but I do think I'd rather be myself than Bill Clinton, I mean, even regardless of how far you want to go down the rabbit hole of the awful things he's probably done.
21 contact numbers for him in the black book. I was like, holy shit.
On the serious though, like, this guy has all them like so much money and power, but there's so many things he can't do. If he decided to grow a conscience, he really couldn't. Like, he would be killed, either destroyed, his life would be over. Like, I mean, he's already just become accustomed. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a way to live. It's like, what do you really get out of all that money, all that? I mean, at the end of the day, what really matters is family. So, in my opinion,
I wholly agree, man. And an interesting window into these belief systems, and especially a lot of what these occult groups believe in that are out of that Crowley vein. I mean, it's legitimately like they they have this distorted version of reality that it has been accepted by these there's it's an interesting spectrum of members as well, which I find like pretty fascinating. But like Robert de Grimstone, the founder of the process, like he even explains in the process philosophy in this book, right? And he says, Christ said, "Love thine enemy." Christ's enemy was Satan, and Satan's enemy was Christ. Through love, saint and sinner destroy the enmity between them. Through love, Christ and Satan have destroyed their enmity and come together for the end. Christ to judge, Satan to execute the judgment. The key to this treatise is contained in the sentence which says that Christ and Satan have joined forces to bring about the end of the world. Christ, according to the process, was employing Satan as a hitman, which is absolutely ridiculous. But this is where they distort it into this divine mission, right? And it's, like, how are you going to believe that? But at the same time, these people were somewhat intellectual, like a lot of the members, and it's like, dude, it's fascinating, honestly, when you go down this rabbit hole, because they were like, his wife divorced L. Ron Hubbard, right? And they were all they all met at the same area, and at I forget the name of the institution, but it was an institute that they had met at, and yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. But I couldn't believe that. Yeah. Oh, well, and by the way, they firmly believe its divine duty was to hasten the arrival of the final days, as far as like, setting fires which, like I said, David Berkowitz allegedly set like over 1,000 fires in New York before the Son of Sam's killings happened. And so they called it the fires of Armageddon, death, chaos, and confusion. That's their goal. Right. And Berkowitz, man, he left a letter, which I found this so crazy. He left a letter in his apartment, right? That was found and withheld by the police department, in which Berkowitz wrote a warning to all the police agencies in the tri-state area, saying there was a cult that had as its goal the murders of 100 young men and women, right? And Maury Terry talks about that in The Ultimate Evil, and he basically said that this group was operating out of Untermeyer Park and was committing these murders to achieve that goal and he was operating within the process in another cult group called the Children, right? And it's so much in the vein of Henry Lee Lucas and the Hand of Death cult, I think is what it was called. And I mean, man, you want to know the connections with the process? Zodiac, Smiley Face Killers, Jeffrey Dahmer, Sirhan, which allegedly he had a friend or had an acquaintance who was a member of the process, and just so happened to meet with this friend who was the chef in the Ambassador Hotel the day before the assassination happened. And I was pretty blown away when I heard that. I mean, and I believe that Sirhan was a complete patsy, as far as I don't think he killed him, clearly I believe that was Thane Eugene Cesar, the security guard, but still absurd. And then you have David Berkowitz and Charles Manson, right? And like I had mentioned before, man, there was a Rome chapter of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. All right. This was like international, right? And they moved like an intelligence operation, right? They moved like intelligence, just like L. Ron Hubbard, man, which I'm starting to find out. It seems that he is a spook, right? And so, you know what I mean? And so,
yeah. I thought it for a long time, and I haven't dug too deep. It's like, this guy
right, it's so clear, it's clear.
I mean, just even look at the methodology of how Scientology operates. You're like, this feels like just the bare bones of like Fed shit that you just threw a religion on top of. Like,
hell yeah, it does, man.
Yep.
But anyway, that I guess that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate just so happened to be affiliated with the Rome chapter. Were in Rome just before the killing of Sharon Tate. And and they happened to be in Rome, affiliated with this process chapter, just the same time as L. Ron Hubbard was and Robert de Grimston, the founder of the Process Church. And so then as they come back from Rome, the murders happen, and then the Rome chapter shuts down right after. And then the chapter that's in LA, they uproot and move to Ontario. They go to Canada. It's just like, brother, when and then you there's just, man, I realized, like, man, I gotta, as far as, like, I thought I did a Charles Manson episode. You know what I mean? Like, there's still so much more, right? And Mama Cass Elliot, the Mamas and the Papas, deeply involved in McGowan's book in Laurel Canyon, and she, dude, I think they killed her. I think that she was basically in love with her handler or something. It very interesting how this happened, and because she's 32 and had a heart attack and died. Like, it's so strange how that occurred. And she lived directly across the street from two of the victims of the Tate LaBianca murders. And she had someone who was directly tied to Ronald Stark and the CIA, who was providing the LSD and the MDA, which I forget what MDA stands for, but it's like specifically a mind control drug, right? MK Ultra, like, specifically came out of MK Ultra. And so they had been selling the Manson family a shitload of MDA. Like, they had, I guess Susan Atkins was pissed, and her and Tex Watson were pissed off that this guy screwed them over with a $10,000 MDA deal. And it's just like, there are additional factors. You know what I mean? Anyway, sorry, dude. I've been going so hard on this shit. It's blowing my mind. But
Well, I assume we'll be getting a unless I can put your nose down the Drake path a little bit more. I do think we'll probably be getting something along along the satanic path here soon from you. I do want to let I do want to say to the audience, I don't know if maybe it's just a different time we went, but I just felt like the views were throttled. So if you got anything out of this, and I just think it wouldn't surprise me the least with the content we were covering. I mean, I'm not even saying anything more sinister. They just sometimes will flag words and kind of deboost you. Obviously, the stuff we're talking about today probably is going to trigger a lot of deboosting, or even just flagrant, actual manipulation by physical actors, especially with someone like Nick Bryant. So do us a favor, and if you got any enjoyment out of this whatsoever, share it around. Do things like what Lainey does sometimes, make edits, or take clips, whatever. Share it around, that way this can get out, because I do think this is valuable info. Definitely go check out Nick's stuff. But I think we need to get out of here. I trapped my cat in the room, and he's been yelling at me. So
Sounds good,
it's
buddy.
about time to get out of here. So I guess Austin, you want to let people know where they can find you at, and I don't know if there's any upcoming content you're going to be working on that you want to let them know about.
Yeah, honestly, man, I go into this shit and I'm like, oh, I'll do a Son of Sam episode, and then I'm like, nah, I'm doing a Process Church the Final Judgment episode. It felt a lot like when I went in to do McMartin. And then I came out with the FMSF and the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. It feels a lot like that. And I have to say, dude, L. Ron Hubbard seems to be directly tied to Gladio, right? Yeah. And it gets crazier than that, because it seems like so is this Process Church. And they operate a lot like Scientology, the way they utilize the legal system. It's very interesting, man. A lot of lawsuits, and a lot of fake former members, dude. And by the way, they didn't like, the organization didn't stop to exist or cease to. No, they rebranded. They're an animal refuge now, and they're called Best Friends.
Yeah,
and they still have original founding members, like, deeply
people go
involved
follow
with the
Dana
occult.
Dudah's work if
Dude,
you want to
we gotta
really
have
go
her
down
on
that
some
rabbit
point.
hole. I've had her on the
She's
show before.
amazing,
but,
bro.
yeah.
Oh, for real? Yeah, I got caught up on some of her stuff recently, and I was like, wow, how did I not know about her? But
It's
anyway,
definitely her angle.
yeah, she's brilliant, dude. I was very impressed.
She's cool.
Anyway, so yeah, find me. One, support me on Buzzsprout, support me on Patreon. I'm gonna really attempt to get my Patreon in order by at least by next week. So hopefully I can get that setup. But other than that, you can always find my podcast on most audio streaming platforms, the Underclass Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Underclass Pod and at the Underclass Podcast on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely go support Austin. Check out his work. He's does great work. A lot of great stuff there. Go check it out. And yeah, go support him. Maybe he'll start doing like what I do, so that you guys can, if you support him, you can come on the StreamYard. So if you want to support Austin and you want to have that perk to where he can start dropping the link, so you guys can hop in for these. But yeah, definitely guys chill around. I do also want to let you guys know where I stream these to my Rumble channel, to my YouTube, and I also do the Tower Gang one. So, but I do want to let the Tower Gang people, the one who follow on the Tower Gang YouTube, that's not going to be forever. I'm just doing it, especially since it's a call-in, to kind of be able to aggregate more calls. But at some point, I will stop doing it there. So it's more like I'm trying to leech off my Tower Gang audience. For those of you guys over there, I know not all of the Tower Gang guys like parapolitics stuff. You could go, this is boring bullshit. That's fine. You don't have to. But if you're getting enjoyment over in that channel, and you're like, okay, I kind of like these, then go subscribe over on my channel. Maybe at some point Austin might start streaming them as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I should.
But yeah, for now it's just my Rumble, and then definitely go to the No Way Jose YouTube channel if you want to be able to pop in for these live ones, be able to do call-ins. And yeah, but yeah, follow me on Twitter at Tower Gang Jose. I do want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors that help me do what I do. I have at ZOVERACK. Also, my co-host on Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad. I have at Abrogate D's, and Kevin B. Clark, a full-time guitarist and private music teacher in the New York area. Then I have at _Infinite Zeal. Then my buddy Jacob Daniel of the Biblical Anarchy podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Biblical Anarchy. Then I have Tim Tuttle, who popped in today, at Jolly on Klebold. He's my dude. He does a lot of edits for this that I use for intros sometimes. But yeah, also I'm Will Bell. Follow him on Twitter. But he makes Rabbit Eye wine. This stuff's dope. I went through like the whole case already. Here's the empty bottle so I can show it to you guys. I went to it too quick, way too quick.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would, if you're an alcoholic or if you have any trouble with compulsion of delicious things, maybe stay away. But yeah, definitely like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, guys. Share it around. Definitely go support both of us, whatever. Yeah, no, real quick. I know this is very end. Yeah, damn, I thought it was at 9:30 for some reason. Yeah, we've been doing 9:30, but we had to move it a little bit for this one. We made accommodations. I mean, it's Nick Bryant, Nick motherfucking Bryant. We'll make an accommodation. We'll move it back a couple hours. So yeah, it's a little bit earlier than normal, so that may have affected the viewer count. But definitely share us around, guys. I don't know. I guess maybe. I don't know if I announced this on last week, so that might be my bad that I didn't say the time change. But generally speaking, this show will be at 9:30 on Tuesdays. But every now and then we might have to swap things up for a guest, so just keep an ear out. But for the most part, you can just kind of keep an eye out for 9:30 on my channel or Rumble. But yeah, with that, I guess we're out of here, man. I look forward to... Hey, I guess this is something we probably should talk about after, but you want to do Thursday for our Watergate series? Try to see make that work? I don't know if you're available
I'm
Thursday.
Down, buddy.
All right,
and
there you go.
For
the Patreon, guys, there you go. That will be... That will be on Thursday. That will come out, but you won't get it till the following week unless you're a patron. So, but what were we gonna say, bud?
Oh, just shout out to Christina, man. Radix Verum, that's fucked up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she got debanked for those who aren't aware. So I don't know. Definitely go check out. I don't know her links off the top of my head, but if you guys are in the mood to support people, she's definitely someone worthy of supporting. She's put out she's done a lot of. In my opinion, she's one of the best. She is the best source, in my opinion.
And she gets content going. She's great.
On the Michigan kidnapping or Whitmer kidnapping, Fednapping, whatever thing. She is in my opinion, the best source for the information on that. She's been the leading voice covering that. I mean, yeah, she may not be like a a corporate journalist or whatever, but she's just kind of is bootstrapping it. But she's done great work. I was following her when she was literally just dropping, literally writing pieces on it, and it was the best stuff. She was literally, kind of like, ahead of everything, and great instincts. So yeah, she's been great. But yeah, she got debanked, and she's in the work of making a documentary. I believe it's going to be like a 3-parter or a 2-parter. So it's going to be like a whole series now about that. And I do think this is very dangerous stuff for them right now. For the powers that be, so I do think they're working every which way to shut her down. So if you guys want to do what you can and do your part to help her out, go check her out at Radix Verum. I believe that's her YouTube channel as well. I think it's at Not Radix on Twitter.
Oh,
those who want to
okay.
go check out her stuff, something like that. But or I don't know how it shows up on Twitter. I think it's at Not Radix, but I think if you
think
type
that
in
sounds
Radix
right.
Verum, it might pop up as well. That might be like her screen name. But yeah, definitely, guys, go support her if you can, because that is crazy. They're doing that, and it's really rated at like a. She's really trying to get it
Crucial
out, I
juncture.
believe, before the weaponization committee is over, because I believe in that first one, the way it sounds to me is she's heavily alluding to that there's going to be a big ol' dropping the dick on the table to the feds in that, kind of like the
Let's
timing being that it drops at a time. So I don't know if the feds are just like, yo, I'm going to fucking do what I can to slow you up, but I don't
Wouldn't
know.
be surprised.
Yeah, because she's having to pull out a lot of money, and like they've basically stopped her money. And she will supposedly get this money back eventually, but now it's just to wait
Yeah.
for a check to come. But yeah, I mean, I will say for those supporting her, she did make it clear that this isn't going to affect that money because it's in a different account, but that's like her personal
That's
money
cool.
that she was like using to fund ventures. She's like coming a lot out of pocket. I don't think people realize how,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like your first project or something, that it really is just pretty much all out of. I mean, like you might be able to crowdfund a lot of it, and a lot of people have crowdfunded a lot, and from my understanding, and have helped her do a lot. But a lot of that is really just like she's not making much profit, if anything. Like really, you only start seeing profit, I think, from ventures like that, probably 2, 3, and even though not great profit, you start seeing a greater return, as you start doing more of them, I would assume. Right. So a lot of this is just a passion project on her end. I would like to see her get, profit out of it, and the people that help her get some sort of economic incentive to do things like that and to continue to do things like that. So, I mean, I'm just hoping you guys out there are that market that sees that. So, I mean, if you're at a crossroads between supporting No Way Jose or supporting Christina, definitely go over to her channel and support her. And after that, if you have another couple bucks to chip in, go support Austin and then support me.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. But I appreciate everyone who shows up to these, shares them around. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. And for those Patreon members, there'll be a live stream on Thursday that you can check me and Austin at the normal time, 9:30, starting a Watergate series. But yeah, that's enough of all that. Let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
See you, fellas.